Princess Styra stood at the center of the grand throne room, her silver eyes cold and unshaken. Around her, powerful warriors from different alien species knelt, their heads bowed in submission. They had come to win her favor, to ask for her hand in marriage. And as always, she rejected them without a second thought. "You are weak," she said, her voice sharp like a blade. "Not worthy of a Zendrai queen." The suitors, some towering and monstrous, others sleek and intelligent, did not dare protest. They had seen what happened to those who argued with Styra. The last one who would try to impress her, a battle-hardened general, had been humiliated in a duel before the entire court. His pride had shattered, and he had left in disgrace. The Zendrai Dominion was one of the most feared empires in the galaxy, and its rulers were stronger, faster, and more advanced than most species. Thyra was their greatest warrior, undefeated in combat, unmatched in strategy. She had never met a male who was her equal. As the rejected suitors left the hall, her advisor, an older Zendrai named Calix, stepped forward. "Your Highness," he said carefully, "the council grows restless. They believe it is time for you to choose a mate." Thyra scoffed. "I will not lower myself for the sake of tradition. But the alliance is not worth my submission." She turned away, her long cloak flowing behind her. "There is no male in the galaxy who deserves me." Little did she know, that belief was about to be challenged. *****. A few light years away, on the bridge of the HSS Valiant, Captain Dorian Hayes leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. A holographic image of an admiral flickered before him, giving orders. "The Zendrai Dominion is one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy," the admiral said. "They respect strength above all. If we want an alliance, we need to prove ourselves. That's where you come in." Dorian raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly am I supposed to impress them?" The admiral smirked. "By not dying." Dorian chuckled. He had fought in countless battles, survived impossible odds, and earned the respect of enemies and allies alike. But negotiating with a proud alien empire, that was a different challenge altogether. "Princess Zyra is their greatest warrior," the admiral continued. "No one has ever beaten her, and she rejects every suitor who dares to approach. If she sees humans as weak, we lose this deal. Your job is simple. Prove we are not weak." Dorian sighed, rubbing his temples. "So let me get this straight. You want me to stand before an arrogant alien princess, make sure she doesn't hate us, and survive whatever test she throws at me?" "Exactly." A slow grin spread across Dorian's face. "Sounds fun." Little did he know, Princess Styra would be the most dangerous opponent he had ever faced. The royal hall of the Zendrai Dominion was filled with tension. Alien warriors, nobles, and diplomats watched in silence as the massive doors opened. A lone figure stepped inside. He was different from the others. Captain Dorian Hayes walked with confidence, his sharp eyes scanning the grand chamber. Unlike the towering Zendrai warriors covered in battle armor, he wore a simple military uniform, his blaster holstered at his side. He didn't bow. He didn't kneel. He simply stood tall, unfazed by the powerful beings around him. On the golden throne at the end of the hall, Princess Zyra studied him with cold amusement. Another fool sent to impress her. She had crushed stronger men than him. This human was nothing special. Calix, the royal advisor, stepped forward. "Captain Dorian Hayes of the Human Stellar Federation," he announced, "here to represent his people." Dorian gave a small nod. "Pleasure to be here." His casual tone made some of the warriors growl in offense. Zyra smirked. This human was either very brave or very stupid. "You are bold," she said, her voice like ice. "Most males bow before me." Dorian shrugged. "I don't bow to anyone." A ripple of shock moved through the court. The idea of a male, especially a human, speaking so casually to the Zendrai princess was unthinkable. Zyra narrowed her eyes. "Do you know who I am, human?" Dorian tilted his head. a princess with too many rejected suitors. The room fell silent. The Zendray nobles expected Syra to kill them where he stood. But instead of rage, she felt something strange, amusement. "You have a sharp tongue," she said, "but words mean nothing here. Strength decides everything." She stood from her throne, stepping down with slow, graceful movements. Her armor shone under the lights, her presence commanding. She stopped a few feet from him. "I challenge you, human." Dorian raised an eyebrow. "To what?" "A test of strength, skill, and will. If you pass, I will listen to your alliance proposal. If you fail," her lips curled into a smirk, "you leave in disgrace." Dorian chuckled. "And if I refuse?" "Then you prove yourself weak." The word weak hit like an insult, but Dorian's grin never faded. He could see the challenge in her eyes, the silent dare. She was waiting for him to back down. "All right, princess," he said, stepping forward. "Let's play." Syra's smirk widened. Finally, someone interesting. Little did Dorian know, she had no intention of letting him win. The Zendray battle arena was a massive coliseum carved from black stone, surrounded by towering statues of past warlords. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, and the crowd of alien warriors roared in excitement. They had gathered to witness something unheard of, a human facing Princess Syra in combat. Dorian stood in the center of the arena, rolling his shoulders. He had faced death before, but this was different. His opponent wasn't just any warrior. She was the best. Across from him, Syra stood tall, her golden armor reflecting the flames around them. She had chosen no weapons, only her fists. The message was clear. She didn't need them. A Zendray announcer stepped forward. "The rules are simple. No killing. No outside help. No surrender. The fight ends when one warrior is unable to continue." Dorian smirked. "No surrender. Fine." Syra cracked her knuckles. "I will give you one chance, human. Walk away now." Dorian crossed his arms and missed the chance to beat a spoiled princess. "No thanks." The crowd gasped at his words, but Syra just grinned. He was arrogant. She liked that. The announcer raised his hand. "Begin. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk." Syra moved first. She was fast, faster than any creature Dorian had ever seen. In a blink, she was in front of him, throwing a powerful strike at his ribs. He barely dodged, rolling to the side. The ground shook where her fist landed. Damn, if that had hit, he wouldn't be getting up. Dorian reacted quickly, stepping in and aiming a punch at her side. But Syra was ready. She blocked effortlessly, twisting his arm and slamming her elbow into his chest. He staggered back, coughing. "She's strong. Too strong." But he wasn't done yet. Syra expected him to hesitate. Instead, he charged forward, feinting left before sweeping low. His leg caught her ankle, and for the first time in years, Princess Syra stumbled. The crowd gasped. Syra's eyes flashed with surprise. No one had ever made her lose balance before. This human was different. Dorian didn't stop. He threw a quick punch, aiming for her shoulder. But Syra recovered instantly. She dodged, grabbed his arm, and flipped him over her shoulder. He hit the ground hard. Pain shot through his back, but he gritted his teeth and forced himself up. Syra tilted her head. "You're still standing." Dorian wiped blood from his lip. "You hit like a girl." The crowd roared at his defiance. Syra's smirk widened. She was enjoying this. For the first time, she had found a male who refused to break. This fight was far from over. Dorian's body ached, but he refused to fall. His breath was heavy, sweat dripping down his face, yet his grin never faded. Across from him, Princess Syra stood tall, her golden eyes locked onto him with something he couldn't quite place. Was it amusement? Curiosity? Respect? The crowd roared around them, but Dorian only focused on her. "You should be on the ground by now," Syra said, arms crossed. No human has ever lasted this long against me. Dorian chuckled, rolling his shoulders. Guess I'm not like other humans. Zyra smirked. She liked his confidence, even if it was reckless. Most males bowed to her strength, afraid of her power. But this one, he didn't just resist. He fought back. Enough games, she said, stepping forward. Let's end this. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Zyra attacked again, faster this time. She launched a knee toward Dorian's ribs, but he managed to twist away, barely avoiding the blow. Before he could counter, she grabbed his arm, spun him around, and slammed him into the ground. Dorian groaned, pain shooting through his back. The crowd cheered. They thought it was over. But Zyra knew better. Slowly, painfully, Dorian pushed himself up. His arms trembled, his breathing was uneven, but he still stood. He wiped blood from his lip and smirked. Is that all you got, princess? The crowd fell silent. No one had ever spoken to Zyra like that, not after taking a beating. She stared at him, eyes narrowing. Was he foolish, or was there something else? For the first time, Zyra felt intrigued. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The fight continued, but something changed. Dorian wasn't winning, but he wasn't losing either. He adapted. Every time Zyra knocked him down, he got up faster. Every time she countered his attacks, he adjusted. His resilience was unnatural. Minutes passed, then an hour. The crowd grew restless. Why don't you just finish him? Calix, her royal advisor, called from the stands. Zyra ignored him. Why hadn't she finished him? She told herself it was because she wanted to prove a point, to make him beg for mercy. But deep inside, she knew the truth. She didn't want the fight to end. Dorian was the first opponent who pushed her, challenged her, refused to break. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a warrior towering over a weaker male. She felt like she had found a true rival. A strange heat spread through her chest as she met his defiant gaze. Dorian grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. Tired yet? Zyra smirked. This human was trouble, and she liked it. Zyra sat alone in her private chambers, staring at the bruises on her arms. Bruises. No one had ever left marks on her before. No one had ever lasted long enough to do so. And yet, the human, Dorian Hayes, had done it. She clenched her fist. He was nothing special. Weaker, slower, smaller. And yet, when she had struck him down, he had gotten back up. Again. And again. And again. No male had ever fought her like that. No male had ever looked at her like that. Most suitors either worshipped her power or feared it. But Dorian, he challenged it. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. Enter. Calix stepped inside, his expression unreadable. The human has requested an audience with you. Zyra raised an eyebrow. He's still here. He hasn't left the training grounds. He's been practicing alone for the past 3 hours. Zyra blinked. Practicing. After the beating he took, was he insane? Calix continued, his voice cautious. Princess, the council is concerned. This human is dangerous. Zyra smirked. Oh, do they fear him? They fear what he represents. Calix hesitated. He is not like the others. He does not bow. If you entertain him too long, it will give the wrong message. Zyra tilted her head. And what message is that? Calix's voice dropped. That a human could be your equal. Silence filled the room. Zyra should have laughed, should have dismissed the thought immediately. But she didn't. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. She found him in the training grounds, his body drenched in sweat, his knuckles bloody from striking the hard stone. The arena was empty except for him. Zyra watched from the shadows. Most warriors trained for perfection. Dorian trained for survival. He was tired. She could see it in his stance, but he refused to stop. Are you trying to impress me, human? Dorian turned, smirking. Is it working? Zara stepped forward, arms crossed. You should be resting. He shrugged. I don't break that easily. Zara studied him, her gaze unreadable. Why are you still here? Most would have left after losing. Dorian chuckled. I don't play to win. He wiped sweat from his brow. I play to never lose. Zara felt something tighten in her chest. This human, he was reckless, stubborn, infuriating. And yet, she had never wanted to know someone more. You are different, she admitted. Dorian grinned. Took you long enough to notice. Zara narrowed her eyes. He was trouble. But for the first time in her life, she didn't mind. Zara didn't know why she had stayed. She had come to the training grounds expecting to warn Dorian, maybe even intimidate him into leaving. But now she found herself watching him, studying the way he moved, the way he fought, the way he refused to break. No fear, no hesitation, just pure will. Dorian noticed her silence and smirked. What? No insults today. Zara scoffed. You assume I waste my words on the weak. Dorian wiped his bloodied knuckles on his shirt. Then I guess I'm not weak. Zara hated to admit it, but he was right. She had fought many warriors, stronger, faster, and more brutal than him. But none had lasted. None had kept coming back with that infuriating grin like pain didn't matter. Most males begged for her attention. Dorian, he made her want to give it. A dangerous thought. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Why are you really here, Dorian? She asked finally. Dorian sighed, stretching his sore muscles. I told you, the Federation wants an alliance. Zara shook her head. No, that's what your people want. I'm asking what you want. Dorian was silent for a moment. Then, with a small smirk, he said, I want to figure you out. Zara raised an eyebrow. Figure me out. He stepped closer, his blue eyes sharp. You act like you don't care about anything. Like nothing impresses you. Like no one is good enough for you. His voice lowered. But I think that's a lie. Zara stiffened. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Dorian smiled slightly. You fight like a warrior, but you live like a prisoner. Zara's fists clenched. You know nothing about me. I know enough, Dorian said. You could have ended our fight easily. But you didn't. You wanted to see how far I'd go, just like you want to see how far you can go. Zara felt something inside her shift. She had been raised to be untouchable, to be above all others. No one had ever dared to challenge that. But this human, he wasn't afraid of her power. He respected it. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted him to kneel. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. You're dangerous, human, Zara muttered. Dorian grinned. And yet you haven't thrown me out. She could have. She should have. But instead she turned away, hiding the smallest hint of a smirk. Don't push your luck, Dorian. He laughed. Too late for that, princess. And as she walked away, Zara realized something terrifying. She wanted him to push his luck. Zara sat in her throne room, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't listening. The council members spoke of politics, war, and alliances, but her mind was somewhere else. On him, Dorian Hayes, the human who refused to break. The human who dared to challenge her, who fought her as an equal, who looked at her not as a princess, but as a warrior. It was maddening. She had met thousands of males before. None of them had ever mattered. Why was he different? A deep voice interrupted her thoughts. Princess. She looked up to see Calix staring at her. The entire council was watching, waiting for her response. Zara straightened, masking her thoughts. Repeat that. Calix's expression was cautious. The human is still here. Zara's fingers tightened on the armrest. And the council believes it is time he leaves. Calix said carefully. He is becoming a distraction. Zara's jaw clenched. The distraction. Was that what this was? Was that what Dorian had done to her? She should have ordered him to leave days ago. So why hadn't she? Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. That night, she found him again in the training grounds. He was shirtless, sweat glistening on his skin as he trained. His body, though not as large as his Zendra's, was built for endurance, for survival. His fists struck the training post with precision. He sensed her presence before she spoke. Couldn't stay away, huh? Dorian smirked. Zira crossed her arms. The council wants you gone. Dorian wiped his brow. And what do you want? Zyra hesitated. That was the question she had been avoiding. What did she want? She had spent her life rejecting every suitor, proving her superiority. No male had ever challenged her before. No male had ever made her want to fight harder. And no male had ever made her feel this strange heat in her chest. Zara stepped forward, her voice quieter than usual. You are reckless, stubborn, and impossible. Dorian chuckled. And yet, you're still here. Her golden eyes locked onto his. Why don't you fear me? Dorian's smirk faded slightly. He stepped closer, his voice softer now. Because I see you. Zyra's heart pounded. What do you see? A warrior, Dorian said. Not just a princess. Not just someone trapped by duty. I see the real you. Silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. For the first time in her life, Zyra didn't know what to say. Dorian leaned in slightly, his voice teasing. Admit it, princess. You don't want me to leave. Zyra exhaled slowly. She could end this now, push him away, command him to go. But instead, she did something she never expected. She smirked. Don't get cocky, human. Dorian grinned. Too late for that. And for the first time, she didn't mind. Part 8. The Breaking Point. The grand hall stood silent as Zyra entered, her golden armor gleaming under the torchlight. Her face was unreadable, but inside, her emotions battled for control. The council awaited her, their faces stern. At the center stood Dorian, his hands bound, eyes burning with defiance. Calix stepped forward, his voice sharp. This human has crossed boundaries. He must be punished. Zyra looked at Dorian, remembering their conversations, their battles, and the bond that had formed between them. She should have ended this, should have stopped it before it went too far, but she hadn't. And now her people saw it as a weakness. He disrespected our customs, Calix continued. He defied our traditions. What is your judgment, princess? The room waited in heavy silence. Dorian's eyes met hers, steady and unyielding. There was no fear in them, only silent challenge. Zyra hated him for that. Hated him for making her feel this pull, this dangerous connection that risked everything she had built. But she also admired him for it. Finally, she spoke. Release him. A gasp rippled through the council. Calix stepped forward. But princess, I said release him. Zyra's voice was sharp, final. The guards hesitated, then obeyed, stepping back. Dorian stood tall, rubbing his wrists but never breaking eye contact with her. Zyra turned to face the council. He has proven his strength. He has faced me in battle and survived. He has shown courage where others would have fled. He deserves respect, not punishment. Calix frowned. But the law serves strength. Zyra interrupted. And strength recognizes strength. Or do you fear him so much that you would break our traditions just to see him fall? The room fell silent. Calix lowered his gaze, defeated for now. Zyra turned back to Dorian. You are free to go. But know this, human. You have tested me, and you have not yet won. Dorian chuckled softly. I'm not leaving, princess. Not yet. Zyra narrowed her eyes. You should know when to walk away. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. And you should know when to admit you don't want me to. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension between them was a storm, silent but powerful. Zyra turned away, hiding the uncertainty in her eyes. Do as you wish, but be careful. You tread dangerous ground. Dorian smiled. That's where I walk best. As he left the hall, Zyra watched him, her heart a battlefield. She had spared him today, but she wasn't sure if it was mercy or something far more dangerous, something that terrified her more than any enemy ever could.